Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What do we got today, Rick?
We got some breakout quarterbacks and tight ends.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Friends, we are cruising through the month of August. It is August 6th, I believe, when you're listening to this episode. And,
dude,
we're like, I think August 10th is a full
draft month. We're a week into draft.
In 4 days, it'll be officially 28 days out from the first first game. I think Thursday is the first 4 weeks out from the first game of the season.
Yeah, wow.
So we are cruising. We're like you said, just a month into draft month. This is our third episode.
A week into draft month.
A week into draft month. I'm sorry, I said a month into draft month. Wow.
That would really be into it.
Yeah. So quarterbacks and tight end breakouts. We're going to finish our series of episodes this week with quarterbacks and tight end breakouts. It's been an interesting grouping of episodes. These guys, league winners and breakouts, usually are huge for your fantasy team success. So these quarterbacks and tight ends are guys we want to impress on you to draft to win your leagues. Before we jump into the main thing, we have 4 players that we're going to talk about. But before we jump into that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FF Champs. You can follow me at Morgan Colby _FF, and you can follow Rick at Ricky Lemon _FF. You can check us out on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions, on Facebook.com /the Fantasy Champions. You can also check us out on any podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and be sure to leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and like and comment down below. What do we got with the draft guide, Rick?
Well, guys,
same.
You can order the draft guide for $25. I think we've been telling you to do that.
For like,
and you haven't
2
already.
months.
I don't know what you're doing. Stop buying Starbucks like Morgan. Stop spending it all on McDonald's.
Listen, I don't drink coffee anymore.
Stop. Yeah, that's a lie. That is a lie. I know it's a lie for sure.
It's been 2 months. Quarantine got me off coffee.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how long that lasts. But guys, the guide is live. You can get full rankings, breakouts, busts, player draft values, player breakdowns, and so much more. If you guys order now, you will be entered in for a chance to be in our listener league, where you can attempt to beat us if you can. So make sure you tell your friends about it.
Yeah, let's get right into our breakout quarterbacks and tight ends for this episode. We're gonna try to keep it brief.
Say that every week.
I do say that every episode, but quarterbacks and tight ends. This is probably the most boring episode of all time.
Boring
I don't mean
I'm
like
a big quarterback, guys.
I like quarterbacks. I like tight ends. I just mean like there's so few tight ends and so few quarterbacks that you've talked about them 4 million times.
I don't know. We haven't talked about the first guy a ton because of his ADP, but
yeah, that's true. So the first guy on the list is Kyler Murray. We're going to talk about 2 quarterbacks first, but Kyler Murray comes in first. His ADP is at 57, and we're not early quarterback guys. The next guy is probably more in the range that we would start thinking about taking quarterbacks, but 6th, maybe 7th round for Kyler is what his ADP is right now. The big thing for me, more particularly with Kyler Murray, is, there's always been this comparison, I guess, from him to Baker Mayfield of last year. And the reason why that comparison is continuously made is because, the Cardinals went out, improved their offensive line a little bit. They got a freaking all-star, amazing wide receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, similar to how the Browns went out and got Odell for Baker Mayfield. So it's like, this year there's not much hype surrounding the Cardinals in terms of winning football games like there was for the Browns last year. Offensively, I would say the hype is very much real for the entire team of Arizona, similar to how the hype was there for the Browns offense last year and what it was going to do in fantasy. Now, obviously, Baker didn't work out. Odell wasn't that great. There wasn't many pieces in that offense to use besides the running back and maybe Jarvis Landry. So the Browns really didn't work out all that effectively last year. Whereas, you know, you look at Arizona and you're like, oh, I draw comparisons to that. That's going to happen to Kyler. Well, it's not as simple as just happening to Kyler here. The differences are stark in two ways. One, Baker Mayfield in his rookie year had a different offense for the first and the second half of the season, and a different coach for the first and second half of the season than he did in, you know, all of 2018. So I think, what was it? Kitchens was the offensive coordinator during that time in the second half of the season in 2018, Baker's rookie year. But they had a coaching staff change, right? And they had to implement a whole new offense. They had to implement all kinds of new stuff. And freaking Freddie Kitchens was an absolute friggin' disaster on the field, off the field, in every way. So that did not help Baker Mayfield at all. The big thing that Kyler Murray has as a plus is he's in a system that works for him, and Cliff Kingsbury is his head coach, and it's the head coach that he had in his rookie year. It's the head coach that he has now. So the offense is in its second year. It's implemented for Kyler Murray, and there's no changes there. Like, it's going to be Kyler Murray's offense. So that's the first difference. And the second difference that I would say is that Kyler Murray has two things called feet and legs. And he can make plays with his feet. So I think the rushing ceiling for Kyler Murray is high. Not as high as Lamar, obviously, but it's high. We're talking like 500-600 rushing yards. And if that's the case, you're talking, 50, 60 fantasy point floor for him. So even if he only gets 240 to 250, passing fantasy points, he's still going to get up to 300 to 310 fantasy points. So I think the ceiling is extremely high for Kyler. Whether he's worth that 6th round pick at this point, I'm not sure. But I really don't think that Kyler Murray is going to be the Baker Mayfield of last year.
Now, I think
5th round. Get out of here. I'm done.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Before you started talking, I had prepared a whole argument for Kyler Murray, and you literally said pretty much everything.
Point for point.
Argument. It was the comparisons between him and Baker Mayfield are terrible.
I went to your house
of the head coach,
and I stole your notes.
And 2,
and then
because of Kyler Murray's running ability. So yes, you did steal my notes completely.
I did.
But you are 100% right though. Like, Freddie Kitchens was the coach. He was the offensive coordinator, I think. When what's his name? The guy who was fired in 2018.
Does it even matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
He just was trash anyway. So.
But yeah, no. Freddie Kitchens did not take over as head coach at that time. He took over as offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. And then he was hired as head coach last year, so it was a whole new system that they had to implement. Yeah. Kyler Murray has played in the system. The system is built around him, and it's Cliff Kingsbury who is an offensive mind, and the two guys have been together now for a while. He was handpicked by Cliff Kingsbury. He was going to go number 1 overall anyway, but Cliff Kingsbury had talked so highly about him.
It was so funny. I remember when he was sitting there saying that Josh Rosen is our starter.
That was all for the media.
Yeah, dude.
But yeah, idiots. I mean, even if Murray has kind of struggles, he's still going to be decent.
Yeah.
Even if he has a sophomore slump, just because of his rushing. And he was actually on First Take not too long ago, and Stephen A. asked him about Lamar Jackson and how he runs the ball, and he asked him, "Do you want to implement this more into your game next year?" And he said, "For sure." He said, "You look at it." I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "You look at a guy like Lamar, and I feel like I have the ability to do that as well in my second year." So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he runs around the field again this year. And not to mention the fact he's got DeAndre Hopkins.
He probably won't rush nearly as much, but you get the point.
Yeah, he's not going to rush like Lamar, but he might rush maybe the same amount, if not more, this year than he did last year.
The interesting thing, too, about, when you look at Kyler Murray's metrics is that the air raid offense is traditionally an offense where you run 4 or 5 wide receivers regularly, and you run a lot of plays. They like to pass it all the time and run a lot of plays. Usually you get upwards of 600 to 650 pass attempts and all of that, all of that crazy stuff. So Not only did they have designed rushes for Kyler Murray, but there were also plays where he just got out of the pocket and made a play with his feet. And, it turned into a rush attempt on the stat sheet, but it really was a pass call. So, he probably still, you could say that he had 600 pass attempts, even though he had 542, technically speaking, which was number 9 in the league. So he wasn't getting a whole crap ton of opportunity through the air. But I think the biggest thing he struggled with last year was efficiency and making sure he could, score. Like last year, I think it took him like a majority. I need to check his numbers, but it took him like a long portion of the season to throw like more than, it was like through week 8, he had a total of 7 touchdowns total in the first 8 weeks, which is about 0.9 touchdowns a game or whatever.
As a rookie, though, first half of his career.
First half of the season.
Right.
And the interesting thing about that is that they all came. He had 3 touchdowns in one game, 2 in another, and then 2 in another. And the other 4 games, he just didn't score a touchdown. Second half of the season, he had 2, 3, 2, 0, 2, 1, 1, 2. So he started scoring touchdowns in the second half. And
the offense got better in the second half of the season. And
the offense, traditionally, that's what happens with players. You know what I mean? And like you saw that with Joe Mixon. The first half of the season, Cincinnati's offense looked freaking clunky.
Well,
and then Mixon was able to take over in the second half of the season because the offense started to look better and the new coach figured it out. Same thing with Cliff Kingsbury. I think the offense early in the season was extremely clunky for Arizona. It was like, how is this going to work in the NFL? And then you saw what it could be in the second half.
Well, that's obviously because of new head coach implemented the system. And it was also a young team, a rookie quarterback. And they showed in the second half of the season what they're really going to be.
Right.
I mean, and they also added Kenyon Drake, which helped the offense a lot as well.
Right.
And going into this year, I mean, he's got one of the best trio of wide receivers in the league with Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins, Larry Fitzgerald. He was still like the quarterback 7 as a rookie last season.
Yeah.
As a rookie.
That's crazy.
Now you add DeAndre Hopkins, second year in the league, second year with Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's going to be a top 5 quarterback this year. But he's not somebody I want to draft just because of his ADP. He's somebody who, if he has a bad week 1 or start to the season, I'm going to jump all over him.
Yeah.
And try to trade for him on my team.
So I paced out his numbers from that time on, from week 8 to 17, and he paced at 26 touchdowns. So he's definitely going to be a guy that gets you the opportunity. Through the air, I think he's going to be very similar to that of, he had 3,722 passing yards last year. I think he's going to be very similar to that of Cam Newton in the aspect that I don't think he's going to be a guy that can get over 4,500 passing yards just because he rushes it as much as he does. I think he's going to be a player that, maybe can reach 4,000. But I don't think he's going to have prolific passing yard numbers. I think that you're talking about a guy who probably can get 25 to 30 touchdown passes, maybe 35 to 4,000, passing yards. But then you're talking about how many rushing attempts he has and how much rushing opportunity he gets. And last year he had 309, I believe, 544 rushing yards last year. So I think this year, if he wants to implement more rushing, he's probably going to hit 600 rushing yards and 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, which would be fantastic for his floor fantasy wise on a points per game basis. So even if he only gets 16, 17 fantasy points passing, he probably will get 5 or 6 just rushing.
Yeah.
Which is great for him. So the breakout is coming. I don't know if you want to buy him at his I think he can be a top 3 or top 4, maybe top 5 is safer to say quarterback. But it's harder to buy the top 5 quarterback at, drafting him at QB 8, you know what I mean, or something like that. So it's just a lot more difficult with Kyler there. But
if I will say though, if I had to pick a quarterback, between Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson that I want to draft and redraft, in that range, I'd probably take Kyler.
Interesting. Okay. Let's talk about the number 2 quarterback, Josh Allen. 87 ADP, a little bit sexier, a little bit better in terms of what you want to see from your quarterback. The interesting thing about Josh Allen, for me is that last year, I guess you could consider what he did a breakout season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want to say he's a breakout still, but referring to him as a breakout in my mind means that he's not going to be top 6. He's going to be like top 4 in fantasy football. NFL, he's just going to be garbage because that's what he is. But
oh, he's not garbage. He's not.
Yeah,
he's not great.
Whatever. But I think for him, like it just this guy actually, I was comparing Kyler Murray a second ago to Cam Newton. I think Kyler Murray actually has probably a way better arm than Cam Newton does, and probably will put up more passing metrics than Cam Newton could ever put up. But Josh Allen is exactly carbon copy. He's literally the white Cam Newton at this point. And like last year, he had 3,089 passing yards through 16 games. I mean, that's horrible. That's freaking atrocious.
He also had a 58 completion percentage,
and
which is also not great.
And he only threw 20 touchdowns, but he finished as a freaking QB6.
Yep.
So the big thing for me, it obviously comes down to rushing production. He had the second most carries in the NFL last year with 109. Among quarterbacks. What did I say?
Which is more than Kyler Murray. You just said in general, or you didn't say in general, but you didn't.
Oh, I didn't say it. So, second most at the quarterback position in the NFL with 109 carries. He gets about 7 carries a game. He usually gives himself 7 carries a game, but he basically on a per game basis gets 31 to 32 rushing yards, and he had 9 rushing touchdowns. All he does in the red zone is literally run it in. So he's gonna get 600 rushing yards. He's probably gonna get, if he plays a full season, 7 to 8 rushing touchdowns. And I think as far as his passing ability, I think you can say that most of the metrics, like 20 touchdowns, 3,089 yards, like I think I could see a positive regression in both of those categories. I don't think their offense is going to be great, but I think that he could probably throw for 3,500 passing yards and like 24, 25 touchdowns. And if he does that and keeps the same rushing yards, rushing metrics, he could most definitely be a top.
If he keeps those rushing metrics and throws for like 24 touchdowns with 3,500 yards, like he's going to be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy.
Oh yeah, and I think that's why he's on this list, because that's his ceiling. Yeah. I think like he's going to give you that top 6 finish this year. But if he ends up breaking out, he could be, we've talked about this before with the, 2 years ago, Patrick Mahomes, 9th round pick, came out, freaking shredded the league, and just in general was a really good quarterback, but in fantasy was just ridiculous. Following year, Lamar Jackson was just ridiculous in fantasy football. I think Josh Allen could have that kind of season. I don't think he's going to be a good quarterback. I think he's going to be a generic, average Mitch Trubisky-like quarterback, but as far as his rushing, that's going to bring him to that top 3, breakout status.
And with Diggs there now, like he's got a lot of talent around him. He's got, they're a solid offense. That's a really solid football team roster-wise. Yeah. So he's got the pieces around him to increase his passing numbers as well. It's his 3rd year in the league. So he should at this point kind of have a feel for the league. So he's, it's a good breakout age.
Yeah.
24 years old. So yeah, I mean, I like Josh Allen. I don't think he's going to, and I've said this before, I don't think he's going to rush for 9 touchdowns again.
No.
But I do think his passing numbers will increase just a little bit. So because of that, and he was the QB6 last year, so the 2 even out, I think he's going to be about the QB6 this year again. And you're getting him in like the 9th round as like the 11th quarterback off the board. So
yeah,
he is a much better value pick. I'd rather have Josh Allen at his ADP than Kyler at his ADP. I like Kyler more.
So just to give you an idea of, because this is the common theme with people who are talking about Josh Allen, that he's going to regress in the touchdown category. And I will just give you this as a prorated metric for the entirety of the 2018 campaign. Had he started the whole season, he was on pace for 11 rushing touchdowns. Last year he had 9. So 7 to 10 is totally not thinking crazy.
Sure.
And so that's where I think like you have to really look at a player and think like, that was just an anomaly. And I just don't. He had 8 total rushing touchdowns in 13 games.
When he gets in the red zone, he does look to rush.
Yeah, so he's gonna be that type of player. Like you do it 2 seasons in a row, 8 touchdowns in 2018, like 9 touchdowns in 2019.
His first few years in the league, he really did that. But as he got older, he kind of slowed down because he was taking so many hits. I'm not saying that's going to happen with Josh Allen.
Josh Allen's a brick, dude. He's going to do it.
No, not saying that's going to happen necessarily this year, but over his career, we might see like a random season. And I don't know when it's going to happen where he just goes from like 9 rushing touchdowns and 600 yards to like 400 rushing yards and like 4 or 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing is that if he does reduce like this year, like 3 touchdowns, say he only gets 6, what is that, 18 fantasy points? So, I mean, I don't think that hits him
he can make that
hard.
Up. He can make that up with yards. And
totally. Make that up with yards and touchdowns on the passing end.
Yep. So,
valid points. Let's talk about the third player, tight end breakouts here. Noah Fant, ADP 112. Font is, I'm a little bit more, we both really like Noah Fant. He's extremely talented. I think he was even though Hawk got drafted in the top 10, I felt that Noah Fant was probably the best tight end in the class last year. As far as like a pure catcher and, you know what I mean, route runner and stuff like that. He fits the mold in terms of what you're looking for at tight end. The difficulty that he has is the connection with Drew Lock, because over the course of the second half of the season last year when Drew Lock took over, he was barely targeted. And it was very concerning to me that he wasn't getting the targets that you would want him to get. But his role really didn't change from Joe Flacco to Drew Lock or whoever else they had starting last year. Mm-hmm. He had some games where they utilized him a lot. And then he had some games like you talk about the first 5 games of the season where, Joe Flacco was starting. He had 5 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, 4 targets, 1 target. The last 5 games of the season, he had 3 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, 2 targets, 2 targets. So it was like he wasn't getting any target share. The other concern I have with this offense, to play devil's advocate, that I have with this offense is the fact that they just drafted Jerry Jeudy. Is that proper? Yes.
Yeah.
So they drafted Jerry Jeudy. They have Cortland Sutton. They still have Deshaun Hamilton. They just brought in Melvin Gordon, who's a good pass-catching running back. So there's some options in this offense. I think he'll be ahead of Deshaun Hamilton, I should say. I literally said Deshaun Watson's name, but Deshaun.
He will be ahead of him.
Anyway, so he's probably going to be ahead of Hamilton in the target share. I think he'll probably be the third guy. He's talented. He's big. He's fast. He does really well. I mean, his workout metrics, man, he's in the 96th to 98th percentile in every single category that you can come up with. And it's like, he's ridiculously talented.
He's already one of the most talented tight ends in the league.
Yeah. So I think just based on pure talent, he should have a relatively decent season. When you look at the opportunities that he had last year, the change of quarterback, the fact that it was his rookie season, I think sometimes you just got to take on a first round tight end, looking at the talent, sometimes you just have to take a leap on a guy. Now, ADP in the 10th round is a little bit hard for me in 12 team, but at the same time, I mean, what are you losing drafting Noah Fant in the 12th? I mean, in the 10th, 11th round. So I think for me, his target share will increase this year. His quality of target will probably increase just slightly if Drew Lock does have a little bit more success. And I think that he'll be a little bit more efficient because it's second year in the NFL and he's figured it out. He had 67 targets in his rookie season. So if you're talking about him taking a leap from his rookie year to his, second, third year in the NFL, I think you could definitely see this year an increase to 90 to 100 targets, which is, that can get you top 10 production at the tight end position. So that's kind of what we're looking at for Noah Fant. I think he breaks out. I think he ends up like a top 6-7 tight end this year. And it's all based on, his sheer talent and opportunity in the offense, I guess.
Yeah.
Player comps George Kittle, by the way.
Yeah, that alone should get you excited for Noah Fant. He's an extremely talented tight end. And even if he's the third option, he should still get a lot of red zone work.
Yeah.
He should still be a security blanket on third downs for Drew Lock. He should still get a solid amount of work this year.
Yeah.
And it is with Noah Fant, though, it is kind of like concerning because Drew Lock has to be good. If Drew Lock is good, Noah Fant can easily be a top 7 tight end.
Yeah.
Easily. If Drew Lock stinks and the Broncos kind of disappoint and are this year's version of the Browns, where a lot of people are hyping up their offense and
Right.
crapping it, then Fant might be a little bit of a disappointment this year. So, but the potential and upside for Noah Fant is just as high as anybody. Especially at his ADP, like anybody you're drafting in there, Noah Fant's potential is just as high as anybody. When we look at his rookie season, I think he finished 7th among all rookies all time since the year 2000. So not all time, but since the year 2000 among rookie tight ends.
Yeah.
The only guys that were ahead of him, I believe, were Aaron Hernandez, John Carlson, who I don't know, Hunter Henry, Jeremy Shockey, Evan Ingram, Rob Gronkowski. So he's in like the class of he's going to be a good tight end because all those tight ends except John Carlson ended up being really solid fantasy options year
Right.
like top 5 fantasy options at the tight end position. So,
and I think too, we made the player comp. If you go to playerprofiler.com, it tells you the best comparable player just based on workout metrics, height, weight, and all that stuff. Draft value, just kind of make that comparison.
Right.
So anybody who wants to slide into our DMs and say they're not the same player, like, good God, just leave us alone. Anyway, go to Player Profiler and email them and start raging them. George Kittle, though, you saw his first year. He had an okay first season, and then the second year in the NFL was where he really exploded. And I think that's kind of where we're going to see Noah Fant. We don't know what the quarterback position is going to look like. We know it's Drew Lock. We don't know if he's going to be successful. So it's like, if he's successful, I think Noah Fant's successful. If he's not successful, we'll see if Noah Fant can be successful at that point. But who did they just bring in? They brought in a quarterback to back him up, right? I could be wrong. Is it still Flacco?
No, Flacco went to
He's
the
with
Jets.
the Jets, yeah. He should just retire. Give it up, Flacco.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still, because like you said, he was going into your second year, like, that's huge for the tight end position. Like, rookie tight ends usually do struggle, which is why I brought up his rookie rankings among other tight ends. Like, the second year is usually not just for Kittle, but a lot of tight ends. There's a big breakout age for them. So, I would expect big things from Fant this year. I think the backup quarterback is it? It's not Joe Flacco. I have no idea who the backup quarterback is.
Good luck if there's a backup that needs to come in. I mean, if there's no really good backup for that team, that would tell me that they really, really buy in on Drew Lock. But
I don't think they signed anybody. So whoever, it might be Case Keenum. Did they sign Case
that's
Keenum?
not a bad backup. He likes his tight ends.
Oh yeah, no, Case Keenum would be. It would stink for every other player. Like Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. But
who do we got next, Rick?
All right. Last guy, my favorite guy.
Oh, boy.
TJ Hawkinson.
The Hawk.
The Hawk, baby.
Let's go.
Speaking of rookie tight ends, I mean, we saw the flash last season in week 1. I mean, we've talked about this guy multiple times in the show. He's been working out with George Kittle all offseason. If you've been watching any of the hype videos, you'll be excited. He looks the part. He like when you watch the film on him and just watch his workout videos. Yeah, I know get excited about workout videos in the offseason is a big no, but I can't help it. He looks like it's
a given in fantasy football.
Kittle. Like he looks like that type of player. He's huge.
Complete side note: did you see that video of DK Metcalf jumping over sticks and people started to get sweaty?
Oh yeah,
it's freaking ridiculous. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, but the Hawk is like. He looks like Gronk almost as well. Like he looks like he looks like the tight end that's going to be the tight end one. Like this big muscular dude.
He looks like in the next couple years he could be up there with like Kelsey.
For sure. In like 2 or 3 years, I think he could be. But
maybe
for this year, even I think I talked about how the second year is a great breakout age.
Yeah.
He's going to be just like Noah Fant, the third option. He might be, it might be a better offense than the Broncos. I know that might be a hot take, but the Lions' offense is very underrated, I think.
That's not really a hot take. I think it's a far better offense than the Denver Broncos.
You might not think that's a hot take, but there are people that like will not draft anyone in the Lions because they're on the Lions, which I get because they are on the Lions. But this year, honestly,
you have a quarterback who's going to throw like 35 touchdowns this year. I'll be all right with that.
I believe they have a top 10 offense. It's their defense that's the problem. But Hawk, like,
which is surprising, but
Yeah.
Anyway.
I know that is kind of surprising. He is on the COVID list, but
I think they just took him off.
Did they?
Yeah, Matt Stafford came off, Gardner Minshew came off, and I believe Hawk came off, but I don't believe Kenny Golladay did.
Okay. So
I think they all got false negative tests, I believe.
His workout metrics too are also insane. I don't know who his player profile is. I would
Ian Thomas.
Oh, everybody, Ian Thomas.
Yeah,
but he was the 8th overall pick. The Lions are going to use him. Matt Stafford is his quarterback. Who he is a top 12 quarterback in the league. Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones are there, obviously, but I think T.J. Hawkinson is going to get a lot. Like I would not be surprised if Hawk gets like 9, like in between the 8 to 10 touchdowns this year. Like I think he's going to be a red zone freak this year. He's also wasn't his true catch percentage. I think we talked about this on the show previously, but his true catch percentage was pretty high considering because I know we talked about how he dropped a few passes.
Yeah, he had a 54% catch rate, but his true catch rate was 74%.
Right.
And his catchable target rate was 72%, which ranks 37 among tight ends in the NFL. So he had 59 targets and only 43 of them were catchable. And that was when Driscoll came in and played quarterback for the Lions for a while. So with a healthy Matt Stafford, there should be a lot of catchable balls. The Lions are going to use him a lot this year. Like I said, he was the 8th overall pick. Yeah.
I'm really high on Hawkinson, not just because I really like him as a player, but his ADP, man. I mean, it's so low, 147.
Yeah. I saw his metrics, last offseason, and I thought, my goodness, this man looks like Gronk. 6'5", 251. Same 40 time as Gronk. He's got a great burst score. He's got a great agility score.
Week 1 again.
92 percentile catch radius, which is
he looks like a young
tight end. He looks like a young Gronk. When you watch him, like Rick said, watch him. Go watch week 1 of the NFL season last year. When what did he score 20 something fantasy points that week? Go watch him that week. What'd you say?
I think he scored like 20.
Yeah, so go watch him that week, and you'll see what you're going to get from this guy on a week-to-week basis, either this year, next year, or in the future at some point. He's just ridiculously good. It takes rookie tight ends, unfortunately. We talk about this with wide receivers, and we talk about this with tight ends. It takes a little bit for these guys to develop, especially tight ends. Tight ends take 2 to 3 years to develop, and it's always a little bit later. That's why I'm more nervous about Noah Fant because I think it might take him another year. But I just think if you draft for TJ Hawkinson, if you draft him in the top 10, there's no way that they're not going to target him. Like last year, they didn't target him because their offense completely collapsed. I mean, TJ Hawkinson only played in 12 games last year, 12 total games, and he still had 59 targets. So it's like if you were to, I just want to pace out his target share for the whole season because I think he's going to get more effective targets as the season goes along. I mean, as this season goes along because Matt Stafford's back, he paces at 79 targets. And so if you're telling me that he can't reach 110 targets, 100 targets this year, I mean, you're crazy. And I think if he gets his catch rate up to 65 to 70%, then you're talking about him getting 70 to 75 catches, which in the end, knowing at the tight end position how effective it can be yards per reception wise, he's not only going to be a guy who can get 800 to 1,000 yards, but he can probably stack up 6-7 touchdowns in the red zone, which at the end of the day, 170 to 190 fantasy points in a season for a tight end is like top 5. So that's what I think Hawk is capable of. And with a year under his belt and Matt Stafford back, I think that's what you're going to get out of him. That week 1 performance, you're going to see a lot more of those in 2020. And I'm surprised that right now, Noah Fant's ADP is 112. And we just had a conversation a second ago about Kyler Murray and how he is ADP 57 and Josh Allen's ADP 87. And I would much rather have Josh Allen at his ADP than Kyler Murray at his ADP. I actually would rather have Hawk at his ADP of 147 than on Sleeper than the ADP of 112 on Sleeper for Noah Fant. So I've been smashing TJ Hawkinson's draft button every time I see him on the board in the later rounds. because I think it's worth the pick. And it's like,
Right.
you know, like even if you want to go Mike Gesicki and TJ Hawkinson just to make sure that you're safe, I guess, you can do that. Throw as many darts, and there's no one in the later rounds that I want to draft at running back and wide receiver at this point. So just smash as many tight ends as you can.
Yep.
I guess. So that'll do it for the discussion on breakout quarterbacks and tight ends for the 2020 fantasy football season. That does it for our breakout series, I guess. Pretty exciting stuff.
That
but
is exciting,
refer to these episodes when you draft in 10, 12, 14, 18, 16 days, whatever it is.
Tomorrow.
We're going to have a question to end the show that we got from Twitter. But before we do that, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. Most podcasting platforms require you to pay a monthly fee for the amount of data that you upload or the amount of time that you upload, whatever it is. It is absolutely free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or your phone, which is very helpful. You can literally record straight on your phone if you want to. You don't even need like a fancy microphone like we have or whatever. You can just record on your phone. Anchor's going to distribute the podcast for you so it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other podcast platforms. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. So usually there's like a minimum for people. They want you to reach a certain amount of listeners in order to make money. This podcast platform has no minimum. You can apply for their program and start advertising immediately and make money on your listens. It's everything you need in a podcast all in one place. Be sure to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So the quick question to end the show is, who is the RB to own in the 49ers backfield? And I'm pretty sure we're going to answer this the same.
Yeah.
I would think.
It's Raheem Mostert.
Wow. He didn't even allow the question to develop. He was just like, it's Raheem Mostert. So I just wanted to give you the 49ers running backs so that you can kind of get a clear image as to who they have in their backfield. So the starting running back right now, obviously Mostert. You have Tevin Coleman, Jeff Wilson, Jerick McKinnon. That's going to be the guys that are probably going to get you there. And then they have Kyle Juszczyk at fullback. But outside of that, everyone else is going to get cut. So I believe, did Jeff Wilson opt out?
Oh, he might have. I didn't see that.
I can't keep up with the opt-outs anymore.
Mostert almost opted out. There's he actually was talking about it earlier, and he said he was very close to opting out because he has an infant child. But
okay. I was going to say because he's not getting his money.
No. He I guess he isolated himself in Ohio during like all off season, because he didn't want to spread COVID. And I guess so he was very emotional about it, but he decided that he's going to play this year. But it was like a big thing a few hours ago.
I think he would have not been on an NFL team next year had he decided to opt out.
Yeah, unfortunately for a guy in his situation, it's hard for him to opt out because of that.
Yeah.
He's kind of on the older end for running back at least.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a tough decision for him, but I'm glad he's playing. And I think Mostert is the guy. Like Tevin Coleman will get work. I think they'll sprinkle in Jeff Wilson and McKinnon here and there, but similar to last year. But Mostert's the guy that you're going to want to draft.
It's an interesting question because you have a numerous amount of running backs in this backfield. I mean, Jeff Wilson has had his time. Coleman has had his time. Mostert has had his time. They've wanted McKinnon to have his time, but he gets hurt as much as Darius Geis does. So it's interesting to me that the biggest thing is I'm going to have to say, obviously, I'm going to agree with you. I have a bug in my face. I'm going to have to agree with you. Raheem Mostert is probably the guy. But the biggest issue with the 49ers backfield is that it's the Shanahan bred into his genes from his father, Shanahan, running back by committee situation.
That's why I'm kind of been down on Mostert lately. Although his ADP's kind of falling, so if he keeps falling, I'll take him. But as of right now,
I think his contract situation, him demanding a trade, softened his value to the point where people kind of started thinking about, drafting him. And I think also people who are not following fantasy football all year round are starting to do those mock drafts, preparing for their drafts and all that stuff. So you're starting to see a correction in, the ADP and stuff like that. I still don't know if I want to draft more. Like Mostert keeps falling to me in mock drafts in the 5th round. Sometimes in the 6th. In the 6th round, I might be okay with it, but 5th round is a little bit earlier for me. I don't know if I want to take that risk yet. But I think with Mostert, he is the lead guy in the backfield. It's a revolving door in the 49ers. Like 1 week, Tevin Coleman's going to get 25 carries and catch 3 passes and be ridiculously workhorse. And then the following week, it's going to be Mostert. And then the following week after that, it'll be Jeff Wilson. And, one of these guys will score 3 touchdowns and the other one will get 100 yards and not score 3 touchdowns. And it's going to be a weird situation. If the 49ers do go full time with Raheem Mostert, that's exciting. I like that, and I think he's a top 5 running back. Wow, okay, I'm saying top 5 running back too much. I think he's a top 10 running back if they give him a full workload. I think he's like 10, 11, or 12
because of how much
but I'm not sure like if that's even going to happen. It started to happen towards the end of the season, but the real question here is I guess the dark horse candidate in the running back room for Atlanta.
Who is it?
Jerick McKinnon, who has been completely gone for a majority of his career. He has been hurt. He has been whatever frequently.
They signed him, was it 2 off seasons ago now?
Yeah.
They signed him
how old is he
originally
now?
To be the starting running back, and he has not played a game for the 49ers since he signed that contract.
He is 28 years old, so he is. It's not like he's young anymore. His player comp was. I mean, he was ridiculously talented, like so talented.
I remember. I mean, we did redrafts, and I took him like
3 years in a row,
the top of the 3rd round.
Yeah.
So he was going in the 3rd round before he originally tore his ACL.
But he's one of those on Player Profiler. He's listed as an all-purpose back, whereas Raheem Mostert's more of a satellite guy. Sure. So I feel like Jerick McKinnon is going to carve himself out a role in this offense in some form. But if he is healthy and he comes out and he's his talented self, I think that the 49ers would use him a little bit more in conjunction with, like, he would be the new Matt Breida.
Yeah.
And it would be Breida, Mostert, Coleman, 3-headed,
I think that's probably what it's going to be. But I think Mostert's going to.
But they also like Jeff Wilson in the red zone, so I don't know. I don't know with Shanahan. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I would say Mostert at this point. I would keep an eye on McKinnon in the backfield. I do think that Jeff Wilson Jr. opted out. I'm pretty sure he opted out. So Jerick McKinnon is now going in 12-team in the 15th round. So, I mean, it's a shot in the dark for me. I don't draft kickers in defenses. So if I really want to take a shot, I can draft McKinnon in the 15th round and, drop him before the season starts and just see if I want to keep him or if any buzz comes out. But anyway.
He did not opt out, but he was on the COVID list.
Just Jeff Wilson?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we'll see what happens with McKinnon. I definitely think he'll probably be the 3rd guy overall.
Yeah, but I do too. I like Jeff Wilson.
We'll see what happens in the 49ers backfield. I hope that answers any of the questions. I don't want to spend too long on Raheem Mostert for a majority of the time. But that'll do it for this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Next week, we got some mock drafts. We got some other content coming your way. So be sure to check it out. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Buy the draft guide. Do all that good stuff and enjoy your weekend, Fantasy Champs.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.